Because with power, no one stands a chance.
Is it just me, or is it getting a little bit nippy out here?
He's here. And there is nothing you can do to stop him.
There was like moments where I was writing, I was like, I'm fine. That's what a Superman does. Click, 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 click.
He loves the song.
I know. I'm so glad people, just to see it with an audience was great. We're supposed to be talking about Mortal Kombat. Sorry, go ahead. Gary will shoot us all. Go.
You can go first. I talked to you last week.
Yeah.
Alright, so Kenshi is like a very important character for the story. So you see that master and apprentice duo. Would you have liked to see anything else from that duo that you weren't able to explore in this movie?
You know, there's a tendency to, because I'm a writer and I'm extroverted and I want to overwrite. Like I would do a comic series of them training for a long period of time probably. But within the context of the story, I think it is what it needed to be. And, you know, without spoiling anything, but like by the end of it, it's like there's an element of passing down this mantle of being this kind of guardian of Earthrealm in a way. And so no, I don't think there was anything in particular like more I wanted to see, except that just because you know, the things I like, the serialized storytelling, I would love to, you know, in my heart it would be like, oh, this would be fun as a 2 movie or thing, or like spend more time there. But we have such limited time constraints on these things. And this one in particular, like the last one, we turned in like, it was like the longest script ever, and we like cut like 40 minutes out, and it was just like, it was crazy. So this one we're like, no, we really need to be focused, and we really need to tell like a kind of a smaller tale with more dramatic stakes, and also rely on so much of the mythology that's already there. So no, I don't want to do more, but I always want to do more. So that's, you know, it's like I could do more movies with Kenshi. I could do more movies with where potentially Sub-Zero went, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Maddie with the Takasugi.
Yeah.
See you again. Watching this film with the relationship between Kenshi and the retired host Kuai Liang, being WB, were you at all influenced by Batman and his relationship with Jason Todd?
I mean, it's almost a trope at a point, that kind of like gruff older guy and the young whatever. I think what's interesting though is that in this particular instance, Kenshi starts out with such a massive ego, and he's humbled in a way that's so demoralizing. And Sub-Zero's giving him the skills to have hope for life again a little bit. There is that element in Batman always. It's the fact that he helps kids that probably he recognizes, depending on who's writing them, but recognizes them there. And aside from Tim Drake, we won't talk about Tim Drake. Tim Drake just figured it out. But I'm just saying, like other guys, it's like I'm the one that can help them with this trauma because I've experienced that trauma. And I think that's kind of very similar to what's happening here with Sub-Zero and Kenshi, is that he understands what it is to have power and have to control that power. But also, you know, he lost everything. And to a degree, Kenshi's lost everything. At least he thinks he lost everything. So yes and no. I mean, I wasn't thinking about it specifically, but Batman's always in the back of my mind. So, you know, I kind of was. Yeah. Yeah, he's chaotic neutral. I see that. Yeah, it could go either way.
Hey, I see you out here working, you know, many projects here.
Yeah.
What's something that you feel like you personally brought to this particular movie, Mortal Kombat Snowblind, that the other ones didn't have?
The other movies didn't have? Yeah. Like the other Mortal Kombat movies?
The other
or just
Mortal
the
Kombat,
other stuff?
Yeah,
this one is more of a very clear distillation of my love of martial art movies in a way. Whether it's like Blind Fury with Rutger Hauer, or like, you know, the Mad Max element of it, or like there is kind of an element of my brain operates like Mortal Kombat is. It's monsters and sorcerers and cyborgs and ninjas and stuff. So I think from my point of view, it becomes very natural. And I also love martial arts a great deal, and kind of the morality and philosophy behind martial arts. So that kind of adds to it. But I also, this is much more of a restrained story, and it's also disconnected from some of the other two movies in a way. So it freed us up a little bit. We didn't have to adhere to such a massive mythology there. We could tell a more simple story, but we can also tie it into the mythology.
Right.
And so hopefully it's fulfilling in that way if you're a deep Mortal Kombat fan. But the other two movies, as great as I think they are, I also think there's a certain inaccessibility, especially in the second one, where you're talking about, how many games and mythology we try to cram into like a little bit of time. So I think, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you definitely answered
it. I got close.
Yeah. Would you say the animation fits the franchise more than the live-action movies?
In so much that you can do, that's tough to say. I mean, there was a moment, there was like one scene, and I remember in the live action one, the new live action one, it was just unbelievably violent. I thought, that's close. But like here, Rick and these guys, they put together something where it's so gruesome. And if you want to get closer to the fatalities and the violence of the games, even though those are even worse. Like, you'd see Kenshi with like his telekinetic sword like slices somebody in half, and you're just like, that's really a lot, But there is something you can do with animation that makes it simpler to digest, even though it's hard to digest. So I'll write them, and I'll write action scenes, and I'll write violence, but even I'm like, when I see it, I'm like, oh my gosh. I remember like on one of them, I was like, that's really gruesome. He's like, you wrote it. And I'm like, yeah, but it's different, And then you see it and you're like, whoa. And they do such a good job. But I do think it lends it, especially the unbelief of what it is about. You know how it is. Like you see a superhero movie, and if you've gone to any con ever, you're like, why are the costumes so much better at the con than the thing? And I think that with Mortal Kombat, the designs are so good, and I've seen some incredible like cosplay of it. And then you see a live action version, you're like, this is stupid, Not besmirching live action, cut that out. I'll happily write those movies.
Please.
So this is the third film
Yeah.
series. How do you approach writing it so that new viewers don't feel left behind?
Yeah.
See the first two?
Well, there was a little bit of like a request that we kind of deviate from the first two continuity. It is part of continuity, but to tell something that's a little different than that story. So it does feel like a solo story. You don't have Johnny Cage, you don't have Liu Kang. There's an element of like accessibility there, and you don't have the massive mythology that you have to talk about. We do talk about the tournament near the end, but by that time you're so invested in the characters and what they're doing, it's not as complicated, because it's complicated. It's kind of a complicated tourney situation. You're like, okay, great, we won this. We're good for how many generations? Like, well, no, not yet. Just a loophole. You're like, okay, wait a second. Now I'm doing math. Here is much more of a simple story that's easy. It doesn't matter that you don't know Mortal Kombat. It's a story about somebody that's super powered and lost everything, and another person that's super powered lost, and gained some things too. So it just becomes, because it's simpler, I think it's more accessible.
Kind of continuing this discussion of accessibility, I remember there's the first one, a great Johnny Cage. He's very much the audience surrogate.
Right.
And you see this all the time in films. Like, remember that first Hellboy film? There's a new agent, like Agent Myers, and he's pretty much the audience. So you see the BPRD in Hellboy. So this one, there is no, and plus, well, Johnny Cage, he's just hilarious on his own, so he's more than just the audience. So this one, there's no audience surrogate, but as you were saying, it's very accessible on its own. I'm curious if there was even without that audience surrogate character, do you find it still easy to make it accessible?
Yeah, I think so, just because we live in kind of this weird postmodern age where we've all seen things like, Mad Max and Logan. Like, we get it. The minute you see the deserted whatever in a monster truck, you're like, oh, I get it. I know where we are. It's kind of in the zeitgeist, and that's the cool thing about Mortal Kombat is like, it's such a mishmash of genres and tropes and everything that there's touch points for you. Like, we all know what a ninja looks like, so we're like, oh, ninja, and you kind of have this pre-knowledge of everything. So we didn't need to, and there's also that mystery of like, well, how did we get here? And that's part of the story that we want to unveil. And if you tell it right away, then there's no mystery pulling you forward a little bit. So there's a little bit of like, why are we here? How are we get here? That makes it easier. But having somebody like Johnny's really fun, but this isn't the fun movie. This isn't the haha Joel McHale is just a riot. Hopefully we'll get there.
So, Oh. So for Kano, obviously we've seen him before in the previous Mortal Kombat movies where he's basically a participant in like this whole tournament, but now we see him as like this cyborg ruler of like the wasteland. How would you, without giving any spoilers, how would you describe his transformation?
How would I describe his transformation? You know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, I think this isn't wholly out of video game continuity, and we really took something that was maybe briefly talked about in video games and expanded upon it. Because the great thing about the video games is depending on who you play and win with, you have a different ending. And the idea that somebody as crazy and psychotic as Kano potentially gets that power, it fits. You just start logically going like, what would he do with it? How would somebody that could not be satiated with power, what would he do? And that's the hole in Kano's soul. It's like, it's never enough, it's never correct. It's something that, you know, absolutely just abusing it in a way. And then it's like, he was an evil guy before, but he's just gotten worse because he knows that nothing matters in his mind, because he can change it, you know, without spoiling it.
I just wanted to ask. So, I mean, I didn't expect this to go into 3 movies. How many more do we have left?
Oh, like 100.
Oh,
I'm hoping I can keep doing it forever. No, that's the cool thing about Mortal Kombat, especially if you follow the games at all. And that was something I didn't. I used to play the original games and watch the original movies or whatever. But as I got deeper and deeper into it, you realize every character there's like a huge backstory to, and you could just do a ton of movies just on these individual characters. And the people who created the backstories and the bios and the cutscenes, they really put a lot of thought into them. And there's some really great. You know, like, we haven't gotten to Johnny Cage's kid, you know, Johnny and Sonya's kid or anything like that. There's tons of places to go. And then the puzzle is trying to figure out how to make it fit within our own weird little continuity. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate it. I'm going this way. What's up, guys?